Okay, so usually when I do a video, I like to be the sort of look at everything from all angles guy. It's not going to happen on this one. I am a Celtics fan, and I have been scarred by 3 players leaving this team in Kyrie, Horford, and Hayward. And now there's conversation about should they trade Jaylen Brown when James Harden has 2 years left in his contract. Or I guess technically 3, it's a player option. We assume he declines it. You get it. No, I do not want to explore the unknown anymore about hoping a guy will re-sign, especially with how good Jaylen Brown has been from the beginning of last playoffs to right now. I'm not doing it. I am way too terrified. I don't care if PJ Tucker is a throw-in in the move or whatever. That doesn't make it okay. There's other reasons for this besides that, but that's the number one thing is can I please just have a young player who's really good, and can I just have him for like 12 years? I would just, please. I do not want any more players leaving the Celtics. So that's number one. Number 2 is the age difference is it's massive, okay? Like, Jaylen is clearly still getting better. He is, as I mentioned, maybe I didn't, I don't know, top, 15 players so far this season? I don't know. His percentages are insane. They're going to dip down, I assume. But even so, the guy has clearly made improvements every year. His shot creation has gotten better. And as of right now, is it crazy to think he could average 25 points a game at 24 years old while still improving at other things? No, it isn't. He really is that good right now. The guy looks like a perennial all-star. And if you were going to trade that for a guy in Harden who, sure, would make you better right now and probably for the entirety of his 2-year contract, but when I look at Harden's attitude stuff, where he has rubbed several teammates the wrong way, on top of the concerns with his age. Yeah, he's been healthy his whole career, but have we seen that guy? He's not always in the best of shape, and he is usually gasping at the end of playoff series, on top of the fact that his post-game endeavors have been well documented. It's not exactly a guy that I'm locking in to be super in shape at 32, 33 years old or whatever. And that's the other thing too, is if you want to keep Harden after that 2 years on his deal, you got to give him a huge extension. It's $200 and something million, and you got to hope that he's good at 35, 36 years old. If you told me right now that James Harden was going to be amazing at 37 years old and he was going to be a model citizen, well, okay, but we can't tell the future, and I'm not betting on that happening. And the dark side of that is Harden gets worse because he's not in shape, or he just gets hurt, or also he's just a human, and not every guy is LeBron James who can be still an elite player when he hits 35 years old or whatever. While all that's happening, you know Jaylen Brown is going to be killing it on, I guess it would be the Houston Rockets. And I'm just not ready to entertain that timeline. Now, some of this is sentimental value for Jaylen and Tatum, like, yeah, no doubt, but like, come on, man, there's real basketball stuff. This isn't me just being a rambling Celtics fan. At least I think not. It could be. Although I would like to take 30 seconds to be an actual rambling Celtics fan. Why do people do this whole spiel about Danny Ainge never trades for anybody? He traded for Kyrie Irving. I feel like I'm in the Matrix whenever I hear somebody say that. I mean, the other thing I see is, well, they could have traded Jaylen for Kawhi. Number 1, Kawhi left after 1 season. 2, Jaylen's freaking awesome, so, keeping him might not have been a bad idea. Number 3, no one actually believes that hit his ceiling DeMar DeRozan was the same asset as clearly getting better Jaylen Brown, right? Anyway, I guess we can also just talk about the James Harden trade stuff in general now. A bit of an annual update on this sort of thing. It's kind of weird. Philly is really good. And the Simmons-Harden thing, that's been talked about. And a lot of the reasons why I would say that I don't want to trade Jaylen for Harden, a Sixers fan could say the same thing about Ben Simmons, the age and all that stuff. The thing is Daryl Morey's running the show, and he might just want James Harden that badly. Embiid has been amazing, so you could look at it as you get Harden and you're real title contenders. You can also look at it as you can be title contenders by just adding to what this team is right now. Because Philly's got all their picks moving forward. They got the Danny Green expiring. And, I mean, it would still be a bargaining chip between, like, Tyrese Maxey or Matisse Thybulle if you could really get somebody, and we'd have to see who'd be available. But, they have the goods to begin the idea of a trade. And maybe they would just prefer to do that over trade Simmons for Harden. I think a team like Denver is very interesting. If they're willing to put in Michael Porter Jr., they've got some other salary. Their draft pick situation isn't great just because they've got 3 years, I believe it is, that are protected to OKC, so they have to trade around those. Miami has been talked about a bit. I mean, to me, if Miami's not willing to go Hero, Robinson, Achua, and then whatever picks they're allowed to move because they've got a whole bunch of picks locked up in protections and stuff, then it's not going to happen. They need to be willing to do that. And to be honest, I still don't think that's that good of an offer. I mean, Tyler Hero would have to be dropping 20 points a game right now for me to be comfortable with that if I'm Houston. Of course, the Nets have been talked about a lot with this. I mean, to me, the Nets offer just isn't good. I mean, you're talking Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, Dinwiddie, who's now hurt, plus, 5 draft picks that are spread out between unprotected and pick swaps. It's just not that good. I mean, Karis LeVert would have to be amazing, and he isn't right now. And even if he was playing really well, there would still be the concern about his injury history. Did I talk about Denver? I might have. Michael Porter Jr. is the main guy there as a bargaining chip, and that would be a bit of a culture clash. You're talking about Harden and his ISO tendencies in Denver, who like to, cut and a lot of handoff plays around Jokic and that sort of thing. The talent would be huge. The question is mainly, is Porter Jr. essential to the Nuggets front office? Would the Rockets be scared off by his injury stuff? The other thing about this, too, is when you think about teams for Harden, it needs to be a team that's still good after the move, because Harden's only got 2 years left, so that gets kind of tough. The other thing to discuss, too, though, is if Houston just held on to him and that was that. I mean, between Christian Wood, Wall, Harden, Eric Gordon, shooters and all that, they could be a good team in the Western Conference. I know they lost their last game and Harden didn't play particularly well, but you'd think that this roster can be something, and then it becomes kind of this conversation with the Rockets where it's like, well, if we don't like the offers we're getting for the guy, could we just ride it out this season and just enjoy having a good basketball team? Maybe we get a really lucky break in the postseason or whatever, and perhaps that convinces Harden to sign an extension. And I mean, there is Fertitta as the owner, who, and there's been talk about how he's losing money, and if there's fans by the time the playoffs roll around, that could be a way for him to get some bucks back. But then the question there is, are the offers for Harden going to be as good if they don't move him by the deadline of this season? Because you can say, well, the offers will still be amazing next offseason, but you don't know. I mean, then he's got 1 year left. So then the team trading for him has a lot of pressure on them to convince him to stay in one season. Now, if it's the offseason, it's a little easier to then get the players to build around him. I mean, we saw the Lakers do that with Anthony Davis. Like, if they would have traded for AD at the deadline, who even knows what that roster really would have looked like? But in the offseason, it was a little easier, right? So there's that for whatever it's worth. But yeah, man, this Harden thing, it continues to be really interesting. Back to the Jaylen thing, I don't want to do that. But somebody's going to talk themselves into Harden, which it's crazy to say that because he's one of the best players in the NBA. But this is kind of a weird situation where he's made it obvious that he only wants to go to a couple of teams, and those teams still have to be good after they trade for him. So we'll just see. I mean, if you want a couple of out-of-left-field offers, would the Hawks offer like John Collins and 5 firsts? Would the Bulls offer Zach LaVine and 5 firsts? And then, of course, you're throwing money in to make it all work in those 2 deals. I would say probably not. Would the Pacers go with Oladipo, who's looked pretty damn good this season for the most part? Again, my gut says no, even if it's just because Indiana wouldn't want to deal with the whole James Harden headache. We'll have to see, man.